Hello, this is Lessons Learned PowerPoint by Group 3. First we have Lisa Dreiling's research on scope management, then Angela Olson's portion on risk management. Next you will find Michael Field's information on cost management, then Sarah Lombardi's communication portion. Finally, Felina Ferris's research on work breakdown structure, and Jeffrey Smith's portion on the human resource plan. Enjoy! What is project scope management and why is it important? Project scope management is the process of defining what work is required and then making sure all that work and only that work is done during the project. Project scope is the understanding among stakeholders about what goes into a project and what factors define its success. Scope management is important and enables project managers and supervisors to allocate just the right amount of work necessary to successfully complete a project and ensure that stakeholders and team members understand the scope of the project. Scope change. The purpose of scope change management processes is to help manage, control, and document the inevitable changes that will occur to your projects. You must manage, control, and document any changes to your scope. Failing to manage scope can result in scope creep. Scope change involves making adjustments to cost, budget, other features, or the timeline of the project. Having strategies in place to effectively deal with changes as they occur is the best way to keep everyone on track to the completion of the project. Planning scope management processes out will set how you define, manage, validate, and control your project scope. You'll also document the dependencies, assumptions, and constraints that specifically relate to requirements. There are 3 phases of project scope management: planning, controlling, and closing. Phase 1. Plan the project scope. There are 3 critical steps that help to successfully establish the project scope. 1. Establish expectations. Capture the needs and expectations of each project stakeholder. 2. Allocate resources. Produce a project schedule that defines the needs of the project, including the proper allocation of resources such as people, funds, and tools, and setting the overall project goals. 3. Clarify objectives. Fully understanding of all project objectives to avoid conflicts. Phase 2. Control the project scope. Create a work breakdown structure that identifies smaller, more manageable components that make up the project through work breakdown structure and change control process. Phase 3. Closing out the project. The last phase encompasses the techniques for closing out the project both in terms of each step toward delivery as well as the final product. It allows for the vetting and confirmation of the project and can be accomplished through feedback and audit. Through this project, I learned that scope change can be critical to completion of the project, and it also changes budget, documents, and timeline for the completion of the project. In the future, I will assess better the resources and time required to complete projects. My timeline worked for completion of the project at one facility, but a separate timeline would be needed for the completion of the new process at each facility within the company. A helpful chart for the future would be a roles and responsibilities chart for scope management of the project. The task of the project manager and the project team is to identify the risks for a project, categorize, properly assess them, decide upon a strategy, and monitor the project for risk events to occur. Risks are any events that could potentially happen during a project. It is important to review throughout the entire project process, to be proactive and try to predict things that could go wrong, and solutions to manage any potential risks that may affect the project. During my project, I had trouble identifying the potential risks as I am very new to this. I tried using the chart to help guide me through the process. As a project manager, it is important to prioritize risks. That way, the focus can be on the most important risks. A great tool to use to judge which ones are of top importance is the Risk Impact Probability Chart. A probability means that the risk may happen, and the impact may vary depending on the effect, cost, size, or critical factors. A chart will help measure the priority you will place on a risk. When considering the risks your project will face, it is important to be as detailed as you can, assessing each risk and prioritizing it accordingly. Once determined, you can plan a response to each risk to be proactive in the event it occurs. To determine the impact that potential risks would have on my project, I use this chart to prioritize and determine how to proceed. In future projects, I would go even further in depth on the subject of risk management and try to determine root causes and evaluate and identify tools that would be helpful and ensure a plan is in place to help mitigate those risks. Risks management can be hard as there is uncertainty involved in this aspect. Lessons learned from this project. A formal integrated risk management plan needs to be set and in place with as much detail and planning as possible. Recommendations for future. A formal systematic risk management plan is necessary to analyze, track, and control risks associated with any project. Consider using charts and software that can assist in tracking and measuring risks throughout the entire project, as this will help ensure the project stays on track and is successful. A cost management plan is the outline of the project's estimation, allocation, and control of costs for the required resources to complete all project activities. The project's cost plan configuration is one of the most essential parts of a project's planning phase and effectively serves as a safety net that guarantees the project cost is kept within the limits of the budget. The cost management plan, in general terms, analyzes how the project costs will be planned, funded, and controlled. Project cost management is so important to the overall process of managing a project and its costs. Project management in itself is setting up baselines. The cost management plan organizes the company budget constraints and plans for all the costs to be spent. Cost management is a way of managing project costs, which includes estimating project costs. Therefore, the first thing you want to do is to get an estimation of all your costs at the task level. So once the project management team has the cost estimation, then you need to baseline all the costs and keep track of all your team's spending actions, creating a spending and action template to keep track of budget constraints and allowances. Also plan for inflation, any natural disasters that may accrue, unexpected costs, track all items in real time, response to your team quickly, and size your project proportionally. The four main steps to cost management from the project management body of knowledge is resource planning, cost estimating, cost budgeting, and cost control. With lessons learned and recommendations on future projects, I would spend my time focusing on cost estimating, cost schedule, and status reporting, cost containment, and project the correct amount of personnel. Cost estimates can help prepare the project manager and its team to allot an allowance for schedule slippage to be considered if the project gets off track for some reason. The project manager needs to make sure that all managers have read and understood the contracts, schedule, and status reporting procedures. Agencies control and monitor the various project scoping issues, establish a control review board, gather experienced key personnel that contain the technical, managerial, leadership, and communication skills needed for the specific project. All in all, building contingencies in the cost management plan. MLC's direct lessons learned revolved around communication among the project team members. The team was successful at keeping constant communication among all departments during the duration of the 12-month project. The scheduled meetings were utilized as both the time to give feedback, receive feedback, and ask questions concerns. The official scheduled member reviews were important in providing personal feedback and how the individual could be their best during the project. One of the most important parts of the communication was the formal report identifying the exact times and ways that each member could be reached. This information helped each member to be able to communicate between one another in a way where it was quick, efficient, and expected. There was no confusion on how to get a message sent to someone. The problem with communication during MLC Direct Recruiting Project was the ability to wrap up a message. If a message was sent that did not require a reply, there was no way to confirm that the recipient actually received the message. MLC Direct overall has had successful communication. The project had several different mini-departments that included social media team, contractors, and the HR department. All of them were able to sync their duties, needs, and responsibilities with one another. The communication created a productive flow that allowed the team to avoid any delays and further obstacles for the project timeline and budget. The one negative impact was the lack of policy regarding sent messages that did not require a reply. The lack of acknowledgement left the sender of the messages making assumptions. Assumptions could lead to miscommunication. Lack of confirmation led to unnecessary additional emails, phone calls, and memos for confirmation. Further projects should expect all members to sign off on memos, emails, and other forms of communication upon receiving it. This will confirm that communication was successful and that further advances are not needed. All members will reply to any message with a confirmation statement with name and date. The use of a sign-off is used as a way to complete the communication circle so that all members know that communication was successful. The project management body of knowledge defines the work breakdown structure, as a deliverable-oriented, hierarchical decomposition of the work to be executed by the project team. Work breakdown structure defines the what of the project. Everything you need to accomplish in the project is displayed in a single, easy-to-understand chart. The purpose of this chart is to break down the complex activities into smaller, more management constituents. This is a big part of communication as well as task assignment. Within the work breakdown structure, you define who is responsible for what deliverable. Project work breakdown structures can also be used to identify potential risks in a given project. If a work breakdown structure has a branch that is not well defined, then it represents a scope definition risk. These risks should be tracked in a project log and reviewed as the project executes. By integrating the work breakdown structure with an organizational breakdown structure, the project manager can also identify communication points and formulate a communication plan across the project organization. Experienced project managers know that many things can go wrong in projects, regardless of how successfully the work is planned and executed. Component or full project failures, when they do occur, can often be traced to a poorly developed or non-existent work breakdown structure. A poorly constructed work breakdown structure can result in adverse project outcomes, including ongoing, repeated project replans and extensions, unclear work assignments, scope creep or unmanageable, frequently changing scope, budget overrun, missed deadlines, and unusable new products or delivered features. Human resource planning is vital when it comes to planning the manpower and workload around the most important asset, your employees. Human resource planning ensures everyone is trained and educated at the task they are performing and planning out items like schedule and labor requirements. The major impact of human resource planning is that it focuses on the people as the base for the company or group of individuals. Taking care of those working for you should be a high priority. Some possible suggestions would be to always treat your employees or coworkers well. Listen to those around you. Be fair and respect those for giving you their time. We hope you gained some knowledge from Group 3 Lessons Learned Team Project. Lessons learned can be a valuable tool in project management and can help companies improve in future projects. Thank you.